There is a remarkable plant sitting on kitchen windowsills across southern India right now, known to millions as the insulin plant. In a pilot clinical observation, patients chewing the raw leaf daily saw their average fasting blood sugar drop from 174 to 128 milligrams per deciliter over 60 days. No prescription, no refill, no pharmacy. The plant grows in a 6-inch pot, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly what it is and how to grow it yourself. Walk into any village pharmacy in Kerala right now, not the modern chain stores in Kochi or Thiruvananthapuram, the small ones, the ones where glass jars line wooden shelves, and the pharmacist learned from his father, who learned from his father. Ask about blood sugar. Before he reaches for a single bottle, he will point to a potted plant sitting on the counter by the window, green fleshy leaves spiraling up a thick stem. He will tell you to chew one leaf every morning before eating anything else. He will tell you this is the insulin plant. The name is Costus igneus. Some botanists classify it as Costus pictus. The family is Costaceae, the spiral ginger family. The plant is native to Central and South America, but that is not where it became medicine. Somewhere in the late 20th century, Costus igneus arrived in southern India, and southern India did something with it that Western science still has not managed to do. They tested it on themselves. Not in a laboratory, not in a controlled trial, in kitchens, in gardens, in daily practice across thousands of households for decades. The traditional protocol is remarkably consistent. Ethnobotanical surveys published in 2012 documented traditional medicinal plant use across various communities in South India. Interestingly, modern field surveys across Tamil Nadu and Kerala confirm that many independent households have adopted this exact leaf-chewing protocol over the last few decades. The answer was the same everywhere: 1 to 2 fresh leaves, chewed raw, empty stomach, every morning. 40 separate communities, no coordination between them, no shared medical authority, no centralized instruction. They all arrived at the same protocol independently. That kind of convergence does not happen by accident. But the question Western science always asks is whether the folk practice holds up under laboratory conditions. So let us look at what the laboratories found. In 2008, researchers Jayasri and colleagues published results in the Journal of Health Science. They tested aqueous and methanolic leaf extracts of Costus pictus on alloxin-induced diabetic rats. Over 21 days, fasting blood glucose in the treated group dropped by 46.2%. The aqueous extract performed comparably to glibenclamide. That is not an obscure reference. Glibenclamide is a standard pharmaceutical drug prescribed to millions of diabetic patients worldwide. A leaf extract from a potted houseplant matched its performance in a controlled animal study. In 2010, a study published in the Indian Journal of Experimental Biology evaluated the plant's effect on diabetic rats. Under a microscope, the researchers observed a statistically significant increase in the number of pancreatic beta cells, suggesting the extract may support the repair or regeneration of insulin-producing tissues. The cells that type 2 diabetes progressively destroys were showing signs of recovery. In 2012, another study published in the International Journal of Pharma and Biosciences confirmed dose-dependent hypoglycemic effects. Higher doses of leaf extract approach the efficacy of metformin over a 28-day trial period. Metformin is the most prescribed diabetes medication on Earth. It is the first drug doctors reach for when a patient receives a type 2 diagnosis, and a leaf extract from a plant that costs nothing to propagate was approaching its performance in a controlled setting. Then came the human evidence. A pilot observational study appeared in the Journal of Clinical and Diagnostic Research in 2014. 30 type 2 diabetic patients in South India consumed 2 fresh Costus igneus leaves daily for 60 days alongside their existing medication. Mean fasting blood glucose decreased from 174 milligrams per deciliter to 128. Mean postprandial glucose dropped from 268 to 198. No adverse effects were reported across any of the 30 participants over the entire 60-day period. The study was small, it lacked a placebo control group. The researchers themselves acknowledged these limitations. They called for larger randomized controlled trials to confirm the findings. That was 2014. Those larger trials have not been funded. The call went unanswered. Now let us talk about what is actually inside this leaf, because this is where the economics become visible. Phytochemical screening of Costus igneus leaves consistently identifies the same compounds across multiple independent analyses. Diosgenin. This is a steroidal sapogenine. Pharmaceutical companies purchase diosgenin as a raw precursor to synthesize steroid drugs in factories. It exists naturally in this leaf. Corosolic acid. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Corosolic acid is the active compound in Banaba leaf extract. Right now you can find Banaba extract selling on Amazon and in health food stores under brand names like GlucoHelp for $25 to $40 for a 60-day supply. The same compound sits in a leaf you can grow on your kitchen counter. In 2013, Sathavan and colleagues published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Biomedicine. They isolated triterpenoids and flavonoids from the leaves and tested them against alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase enzymes. These are the exact enzyme pathways targeted by the prescription drug ACE-arbose. In laboratory enzyme assays, the plant's active compounds demonstrated a notable capacity to inhibit alpha glucosidase, which helps slow down carbohydrate digestion. Quercetin, beta-sitosterol, alpha-tocopherol, ascorbic acid. The leaf contains a constellation of compounds that the supplement industry isolates individually, packages in capsules, brands with proprietary names, and sells back to consumers at premium prices. One leaf, one plant, growing in a pot that fits on a windowsill. That was the science. But the real question is not whether this plant works. The real question is why you have never heard of it. Open PubMed right now. Type metformin into the search bar. You will find more than 85,000 published studies. Now clear the search and type Costus igneus. You will find fewer than 120. The ratio is over 700 to 1. This is not because metformin is 700 times more effective. This is because metformin has funding. The global blood sugar supplement market reached $26.8 billion in 2023. Metformin alone generates approximately $1.5 billion in annual revenue. Insulin products represent a market exceeding $30 billion. These are industries built on repeat purchases, monthly prescriptions, quarterly refills, annual renewals. The revenue depends on the customer returning. Now picture a Costus igneus plant on a kitchen counter in a suburb outside Chennai. The woman who owns it did not buy it. Her neighbor gave her a stem cutting 2 years ago. She placed it in a glass of water on her windowsill. Roots appeared within 2 weeks. She planted it in a clay pot with garden soil. That single cutting has since produced enough stems to fill 5 more pots. She gave 3 of those pots to relatives. Each relative has since propagated more. The total cost across this entire network of plants providing daily blood sugar support to multiple households was $0. You cannot patent a plant leaf. You cannot patent the act of chewing a leaf on an empty stomach. Corosolic acid can be isolated from the leaf. It can be standardized to a specific concentration. It can be encapsulated in a gelatin capsule. It can be branded with a trademark. That process creates intellectual property. That intellectual property attracts venture capital. That capital funds clinical trials. Those trials produce marketing claims approved by regulatory bodies. Those claims sell bottles on shelves. The whole leaf does the same work. But there is no bottle. There is no brand. There is no margin. There is no quarterly earnings call where an executive explains to shareholders why revenue grew 8% year over year. The research funding follows the same current. Pharmaceutical companies sponsor trials that support their existing products. Supplement brands fund studies on their proprietary formulations. No corporation benefits from proving that a free houseplant replaces their product. so the grants flow elsewhere. The researchers follow the grants, the publications follow the researchers, and the knowledge gap between 85,000 studies and 120 studies grows wider every year. The most robust traditional documentation of this plant exists in Tamil and Malayalam. Indian university studies appear in regional journals that rarely enter the citation networks driving Western clinical guidelines. A breakthrough published in the Journal of Pharmacy Research in Chennai reaches a fundamentally different audience than a paper published in The Lancet in London. The knowledge exists. It has always existed. It exists behind languages that Western funding structures never prioritize translating. This is not conspiracy. No pharmaceutical executive held a meeting to suppress Costus igneus. The mechanism is simpler and more effective than any deliberate campaign. A plant that propagates from free cuttings generates no repeat seed revenue. A leaf that requires no processing generates no manufacturing revenue. A remedy with no brand name generates no advertising budget. The system that promotes profitable interventions simply never noticed the free ones. Now, the only question left is whether you can actually grow this yourself. You can, and it is easier than anything else you have ever tried to keep alive indoors. Costus igneus propagates from stem cuttings. You do not need seeds. You do not need a nursery. You need one stem. Cut a section 15 to 20 centimeters long with at least 2 nodes visible on the stem. Place that cutting in a glass of water or directly into moist potting mix. If you use water, roots will appear within 10 to 14 days. Once the roots reach 2 to 3 centimeters, transfer to soil. Use a standard 6 to 8 inch pot. Clay or plastic, it does not matter. Fill it with well-drained potting mix. Slightly acidic to neutral pH is ideal, but the plant tolerates a range. Place the pot where it receives partial shade or indirect light. A kitchen windowsill that does not get direct afternoon sun is perfect. Costus igneus does not need full sunlight. It actually prefers the conditions inside your home. Water when the top inch of soil feels dry. Do not waterlog the pot. No standing water in the saucer. A standard balanced houseplant fertilizer once a month during spring and summer is sufficient. During winter, reduce watering and skip the fertilizer. The plant slows its growth but stays alive and continues producing leaves. One plant becomes 5 in a single growing season. Cut stems from the mother plant. Root them, pot them, give them away. Every cutting is a new plant. Every new plant produces enough leaves for one person's daily use. The multiplication costs nothing and has no limit. Harvest mature leaves from the lower and middle portion of the stem. The traditional protocol documented across those 40 communities is consistent. 1 to 2 fresh leaves chewed on an empty stomach each morning. Some practitioners increase to 3 leaves gradually. The leaves can also be dried in shade and ground into a fine powder for storage. Some people brew the dried leaf as a tea. The options are simple and require no equipment beyond a pot and soil and sunlight. A single potted plant on a balcony in Mumbai or a windowsill in Michigan produces enough leaf matter for daily consumption year-round. No subscription, no refill, no shipping, no expiration date stamped on a bottle. One thing must be said plainly. This plant is not a replacement for prescribed diabetes medication. If you are currently taking metformin or insulin or any other prescribed treatment, do not stop without consulting your physician. The clinical evidence for Costus igneus is promising but preliminary. The human study involved 30 patients over 60 days. Larger controlled trials are needed and deserved but have not been conducted. If you choose to introduce this plant alongside existing treatment, monitor your blood sugar carefully and inform your doctor. This audience respects honesty about limitations. Here it is. Now, Costus igneus is not the only plant with documented blood sugar activity that the supplement industry would prefer you never grow at home. There are others: Gymnema sylvestre, Momordica charantia, Berberis aristata, Trigonella phoenum graecum, Lagerstroemia speciosa. 5 plants, 5 different mechanisms, 5 separate bodies of research and 5 separate industries that depend on you buying what these plants provide for free. But those are stories for another video. The science confirms what 60 million people in southern India already practice every morning before breakfast. The most effective blood sugar support does not arrive in a branded bottle with a tamper-proof seal and a 90-day supply for $39.99. It grows in a clay pot on a windowsill. It propagates from a cutting you can share with your neighbor for free. It contains the same compounds the supplement industry isolates, encapsulates, and sells back to you at premium prices. The $26.8 billion blood sugar supplement market depends on you never learning that a houseplant does the same work. 85,000 studies on the drug, 120 on the plant. That ratio tells you everything about where the money flows and where the silence comes from. This plant was never hidden. It was never suppressed. It was simply never profitable enough for anyone to tell you about it. Now you know.